I'm Lucia, I'm 32, female, and I watched my younger sister's insecurity detonate her own life. She humiliated her lifelong best friend at her wedding over a perfectly appropriate dress, and when I defended the friend, my sister cut me and our entire family out of her life. She was living in a fantasy world where her friend was secretly trying to seduce her new husband. The fantasy couldn't hold, though, and the truth eventually led to her husband divorcing her, leaving her completely alone with the consequences of her own creation. My sister Olivia is 3 years younger than me. Growing up, our house was a whirlwind of two very different energies. I was the quiet, methodical one, the kid who built elaborate Lego cities that followed zoning laws and read thick books in my room. Olivia was the star. She was bright, charismatic, and had a magnetism that drew people in. Our parents, while loving to us both, were often caught in her orbit. She was the squeaky wheel, and she always got the grease. Her best friend, Chloe, was the third point in our triangle. She lived 2 houses down, and from the age of 5, she was a permanent fixture in our home. Where Olivia was a firework, Chloe was a steady candle flame. She was kind, gentle, and had a calming presence that often soothed Olivia's more dramatic tendencies. In many ways, Chloe was more of a sister to me than Olivia was. We shared the same quiet wavelength, the same appreciation for a peaceful afternoon. Olivia, Chloe, and I were a unit, but it was always clear that Olivia was the sun, and Chloe and I were just planets happy to circle her. The problem was that Olivia needed to be the only sun. Looking back, the signs of her deep-seated insecurity were always there, disguised as confidence. She had to be the best, the prettiest, the most loved in any room. It wasn't enough to be admired, everyone else had to exist in a slightly dimmer light. For years, Chloe was the perfect friend for Olivia because she never tried to compete. She was happy to be the supportive best friend, the maid of honor, the sidekick. But as we grew older, Chloe began to shine in her own right, not out of any effort to do so, but simply by becoming the wonderful woman she was meant to be. And that's when the trouble started. I remember the first truly jarring incident. It was the summer after Chloe's first year of nursing school. She'd come home for a few weeks and she had a new glow about her. It wasn't just a tan, it was the quiet confidence that comes from finding your purpose. Our parents decided to host a small backyard barbecue. Mark, Olivia's then boyfriend of a year, was there. He was and is a great guy, stable, kind, and completely smitten with my sister. He was a financial advisor, a man who lived in a world of facts and figures, which I thought made him a good anchor for Olivia's more turbulent emotions. During the barbecue, Chloe was telling a story about a difficult case in the pediatric ward. She was passionate, her eyes lit up as she described how she'd helped a scared little boy feel safe. Everyone was captivated, including Mark. He was looking at her with the same friendly interest as everyone else, nodding along. I saw him say, "Wow, Chloe, that's incredible. You're going to be an amazing nurse." It was a simple, kind compliment. Later that evening, after Chloe and Mark had left, Olivia cornered me in the kitchen. Her smile was gone, replaced by a tight, pinched look. "Did you see the way she was looking at him?" she whispered, her voice sharp. "Who, Chloe?" I asked, confused. "What are you talking about?" "Don't play dumb, Lucia," she snapped. She was trying to impress him, the whole sob story about the sick kid batting her eyelashes. It was disgusting. I was floored. Olivia, she was just telling a story about her job, a job she loves. Mark was being nice, we were all being nice. "No," she insisted, shaking her head. "You don't see it. She's always been jealous of me. Now that I have Mark, she wants to see if she can get his attention. It's what she does." I tried to reason with her to explain how absurd she was being, but it was like talking to a brick wall. She had already constructed an entire narrative in her head based on a single, innocent conversation. I dismissed it as a flare-up of jealousy, a moment of insecurity that would pass. I was wrong. It wasn't a moment. It was the foundation of the fantasy she would spend the next few years building. Another, more subtle incident occurred a year later during the planning of our parents' 30th anniversary party. Olivia, in her element as an event planner in the making, took charge. She assigned me decorations, and she assigned Chloe the task of putting together a photo slideshow. Chloe spent weeks on it, digging through old albums, scanning hundreds of pictures, and creating a beautiful tribute. The night of the party, the slideshow was a massive hit. Our parents cried, and everyone applauded Chloe. Ease incredible effort. My dad stood up and made a small toast, thanking Chloe for her hard work and saying she felt like a third daughter to him. It was a sweet, heartfelt moment. I caught Olivia's expression from across the room. It was only for a second, but it was unmistakable. Her smile was a thin, brittle line. Her eyes, fixed on Chloe, were cold as ice. The jealousy wasn't just about Mark anymore. It was about everything. It was about our parents' affection. It was about the spotlight. Later, when I complimented Olivia on the party, she just shrugged. It was fine, she said dismissively, though I think the slideshow was a bit much. Chloe always has to be so extra. Extra, I repeated. She did an amazing job, Liv. Mom and Dad loved it. Whatever, she muttered, turning away. She just likes being the center of attention. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Olivia, the girl who lived for the spotlight, was accusing the quietest, most unassuming person we knew of trying to steal it. She was projecting her own defining characteristic onto her best friend. Mark proposed to her 6 months later, and as the wedding planning began, I felt a knot of dread tighten in my stomach. A wedding is the ultimate spotlight, and I was terrified of what Olivia might do to protect her place in it. The year leading up to the wedding was a masterclass in Olivia's escalating paranoia. On the surface, she was the picture of a blissful bride-to-be. Her social media was a curated gallery of joy, ring selfies, venue tour, dress shopping montages. She chose Chloe as her maid of honor, of course. It was expected, and for Olivia, appearances were everything. To the outside world, their friendship was a perfect, supportive bond. But for those of us on the inside, a slow, creeping poison was seeping into every interaction. The first sign of trouble came with the bridesmaid dresses. Olivia chose a trendy but notoriously difficult color, a dusty, muted sage green. It was a color that, as she gleefully pointed out, washes some people out. She insisted on a specific style that was sleek and form-fitting. When Chloe tried on the sample, she looked, as she always did, effortlessly beautiful. The color complemented her olive skin tone, and the cut was flattering on her athletic frame from years of swimming. We were in the boutique, and I saw the flicker of annoyance in Olivia's eyes. "It's a little tight on you, isn't it, Chloe?" Olivia said, her voice dripping with false concern. "We don't want you looking like you're trying too hard." And Chloe looked down at herself, a blush creeping up her neck. "Oh, do you think it feels okay?" "No, it's definitely too much," Olivia insisted. She turned to the sales associate. "Can you order a size up for her? We want elegance, not that." Chloe was mortified, but she didn't argue. She just gave a tight nod. When the dresses came in, Chloe's was, of course, slightly too big. It hung on her looking ill-fitting and frumpy. Olivia declared it perfect. I offered to take Chloe to a seamstress to have it properly tailored, but Olivia overheard me. "Don't you dare, Lucia," she warned in a low voice when Chloe was in the dressing room. "It's supposed to look like that. It's a more modest, classical look." "I don't want my bridesmaids looking tacky." The incidents grew more frequent and more bizarre. Olivia, Mark, Chloe, and I went out for dinner one night to discuss wedding details. Mark was telling a funny story about a mistake he'd made at work, and we were all laughing. Chloe, who has a loud, wonderful laugh, threw her head back and giggled. It was a moment of pure, uncomplicated fun. The next day, Olivia called me. "I need to talk to you about Chloe's behavior," she said, her tone icy. "What behavior?" I asked, already exhausted. "Her laughing, it's so loud and obnoxious. And the way she was leaning in when Mark was talking, she was practically hanging off him. It's unprofessional." Unprofessional? I was stunned. We were at dinner, Olivia, not a board meeting, and she was laughing at a joke like a normal person. "No, it's a tactic," Olivia insisted. "She's trying to show him how fun and easygoing she is, as if I'm not. It's a classic move, Lucia. You're just too naive to see it." She started micromanaging every interaction between Chloe and Mark. Chloe had been friends with Mark for years through Olivia, and they had an easy, sibling-like rapport. Olivia put an end to that. If Chloe texted Mark a question about the bachelor party plans, Olivia would reply from Mark's phone with a cold, curt answer. If Mark mentioned he'd run into Chloe at the grocery store, Olivia would grill him for 10 minutes. What did they talk about? How long were they there? What was Chloe wearing? Mark, to his credit, was patient, but I could see the strain. He loved Olivia and chalked up her behavior to wedding stress. "She just wants everything to be perfect," he'd tell me with a tired Smile, it's a lot of pressure. I wanted to scream that it wasn't about the wedding. It was about her own deep-seated fear that she wasn't good enough. But it wasn't my place, and I knew Olivia would twist my words and accuse me of trying to ruin her relationship. So I stayed quiet, hoping that once the wedding was over, she would relax and this ugly, possessive version of my sister would recede. The bachelorette party was a nightmare. Olivia had planned a weekend getaway to a spa resort. On the first night, a few of us were in the hot tub. Chloe was wearing a standard one-piece swimsuit. One of the other bridesmaids, a friend of Olivia's from work, complimented Chloe on how fit she was. "You look amazing," she said. "I wish I had your discipline to go to the gym." Chloe just smiled and thanked her. Later that night, Olivia pulled me aside, her face a mask of fury. "Oh, you need to tell your friend to cover up," she hissed. "My friend, you mean your best friend? Your maid of honor?" I retorted, my patience wearing thin. "What on earth is wrong with her swimsuit? It's a normal swimsuit, Olivia." "It's not," she seethed. "It's intentionally revealing. She's parading around, trying to make everyone else feel bad, and she's posting pictures on social media. She's trying to get Mark's attention." I pulled out my phone and checked Chloe's profile. She had posted one picture, a group shot of all of us smiling with the caption, "Best weekend celebrating the bride-to-be, love you, Olivia." It was the most innocent, supportive post imaginable. "Olivia, this is getting out of hand," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and concern. "You are seeing things that are not there. Chloe loves you. She is here to support you. Why are you doing this?" "Because you're blind," she spat, her eyes welling up with tears of rage. "You've always been on her side. You always thought she was better than me." Before I could respond, she stormed off, leaving me standing alone in the hallway of a fancy resort, feeling a cold dread wash over me. The wedding was just 2 weeks away, and my sister was living in a different reality, a dark fantasy where her best friend was her greatest enemy, and all of us were about to be forced to attend the premiere. The day of the wedding arrived under a sky of brilliant, cloudless blue. The venue was a stunning old estate with sprawling gardens and a grand ballroom, every detail meticulously planned and executed by Olivia. On the surface, it was a fairy tale. The flowers were perfect, the music was perfect, and Olivia in her couture gown looked breathtakingly beautiful. As she walked down the aisle on our father's arm, a radiant smile fixed on her face, you would never have guessed at the storm brewing beneath the surface. For a fleeting moment, I let myself hope. Maybe the joy of the day would be enough. Maybe the reality of marrying Mark, the man she loved, would chase the shadows from her mind. The ceremony was flawless. Mark looked at Olivia with such genuine love and adoration that it made my heart ache. Chloe, in her ill-fitting sage green dress, stood by Olivia's side, her eyes misty with happy tears for her friend. She fulfilled her maid of honor duties perfectly, adjusting Olivia's train, holding her bouquet, and beaming with what was clearly authentic joy. As I watched them, I prayed that this would be a fresh start. The reception began, and the carefully constructed illusion held. Guests mingled in the gardens, sipping champagne. The wedding party made their grand entrance into the ballroom to thunderous applause. Olivia and Mark shared their first dance, and it was a picture of romance. After the dinner service, the bridesmaids, including me, were able to slip away to change out of our matching dresses and into our own evening wear for the party portion of the reception. I had chosen a simple navy blue cocktail dress. Chloe changed into a beautiful floor-length gown in a deep emerald color. It was elegant and classic with a simple V-neck and a flowing A-line skirt. It was the kind of dress anyone would describe as tasteful and entirely appropriate for a formal wedding reception. When she came out of the changing room, she looked stunning, but in a quiet, sophisticated way. The frumpy bridesmaid dress was gone, and she finally looked like herself again. We rejoined the party, and for an hour, everything was normal. Chloe danced with her boyfriend, I danced with my cousins, and Olivia and Mark were surrounded by a happy crowd on the dance floor. The problem began when the photographer started gathering people for candid group shots. He pulled a group of us, me, Chloe, her boyfriend, and a few of our old high school friends, into a circle with Mark. We were laughing and joking, and at one point, Chloe's boyfriend playfully spun her around and she bumped lightly into Mark. They both laughed, steadied themselves, and the moment passed in less than 3 seconds. But Olive. Aya saw it. From across the dance floor, I saw her smile freeze. Her eyes narrowed into slits. She excused herself from her conversation and began stalking toward our group, weaving through the dancers with a chilling determination. Her movements were stiff, her beautiful gown seeming like armor. She didn't stop until she was standing directly in front of Chloe. The music was loud, but her voice cut through it like a shard of glass. "What do you think you're doing?" Olivia demanded. Chloe looked utterly confused. "What, we were just dancing." "Don't lie to me," Olivia hissed, her voice low and venomous. "I saw you throwing yourself at my husband on my wedding day." The people in our immediate circle fell silent, turning to stare. The laughter died on our lips. Mark stepped forward, placing a hand on Olivia's arm. "Honey, what's wrong? We were just taking a picture." Olivia shook his hand off, never taking her eyes off Chloe. "And you?" she said to Chloe, her voice getting louder. "In that dress. I should have known. You just couldn't stand it, could you? You had to show up in a flashy, look-at-me dress to try and upstage me." My jaw dropped. Chloe's dress was the opposite of flashy. It was the definition of understated elegance. Chloe looked down at her emerald gown, her face a mixture of shock and hurt. "Olivia, I don't know what you're talking about," Chloe stammered, her voice trembling. "It's just a dress, I would never." "You would and you did." Olivia's voice rose to a near shriek, causing the band to falter and the dance floor to fall quiet. More and more guests were turning to stare at the unfolding drama in the center of the room. "You have been trying to get his attention for years, following him around, laughing at his stupid jokes, pretending to be my friend. And now you show up at my wedding wearing a provocative dress and throwing yourself into his arms. Have you no shame?" Tears were streaming down Chloe's face now. She was completely humiliated, standing in the middle of a ballroom with 100 pairs of eyes on her, being accused of the most vile things by the person she considered her sister. "Provocative," Chloe whispered, her voice breaking. "It's a long-sleeved dress, Olivia. It covers more than your wedding gown." It was true, her dress had long, sheer sleeves and a modest neckline. The accusation was so baseless, so detached from reality that it was staggering. Olivia let out a bitter, ugly laugh. "Oh, that's right, play the victim, it's what you do best. Well, I'm not buying it, not anymore." She took a step closer, her face contorted with a rage that made her almost unrecognizable. "You are a snake, a jealous, pathetic snake. I want you out, get out of my wedding, get out of my life." The silence in the ballroom was absolute. You could hear Chloe's choked sobs. She stood frozen for a moment, her face pale with shock, before she turned and fled, pushing her way through the stunned crowd. That's when I moved. The spell of disbelief broke and a wave of protective fury surged through me. I couldn't let her do this. I couldn't let her destroy the kindest person I knew based on a monstrous fantasy. I took a step toward my sister, my own voice shaking with rage. The fairy tale was over. As Chloe disappeared through the ballroom doors, a collective gasp seemed to ripple through the guests. They stood in stunned silence, their faces a mixture of pity and morbid curiosity. Mark looked like he had been struck by lightning, his expression one of utter disbelief and horror. He reached for Olivia again, his voice pleading. "Olivia, stop. What are you doing? This is our wedding." But Olivia was beyond reason. She stood there, chest heaving, a triumphant, ugly glare on her face as if she had just vanquished a mortal enemy instead of eviscerating her best friend. I walked right up to her, my hands clenched into fists at my sides. "How could you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with rage. Olivia's head snapped toward me. "Oh, here we go, Saint Lucia coming to the defense of her precious Chloe." "Her precious Chloe?" I shot back, my voice rising. "She is your maid of honor, your best friend since you were 5 years old. She loves you, and you just humiliated her in front of everyone we have ever known over absolutely nothing." "Nothing," she scoffed. "You are so naive, Lucia. You saw her, you saw that dress, you saw how she was all over Mark." "I saw a beautiful, elegant dress, and I saw her bump into your husband by accident," I exclaimed, my voice echoing in the now silent hall. "The only person who saw anything else was you because you are living in a completely different reality, one where everyone is out to get you, where you are the constant victim." Our parents were now rushing toward us, their faces pale. Girls, please, my mother begged, her eyes darting nervously at the watching guests. Not here, not now. It's a little late for that, Mom, I said, not taking my eyes off. FF Olivia, your daughter just torpedoed her own wedding reception. She started it, Olivia shrieked, pointing a finger at me. You always take her side, always. You think she's so perfect, and you've never thought I was good enough. This has nothing to do with me, and it has nothing to do with Chloe being perfect, I yelled back, my control finally snapping. This is about your insane, crippling jealousy. You can't stand to see anyone else get a scrap of attention, not even for a second. Chloe has done nothing but love and support you her entire life, and you just repaid her by treating her like garbage. Mark finally found his voice. Olivia, listen to your sister. You're not making any sense. Chloe's dress is fine. She did nothing wrong. You need to go find her and apologize right now. Olivia turned on him, her eyes blazing with betrayal. You too? You're defending her too? Of course you are. She finally got what she wanted, didn't she? She got you to choose her over me. Choose her, Mark said, flabbergasted. This isn't a choice. This is you having some kind of breakdown. I'm your husband, I love you, but what you just did was cruel and crazy. The word crazy hung in the air. Olivia flinched as if he'd slapped her. Her expression crumpled from rage into one of deep, profound hurt. She looked around at all of us, me, Mark, our parents, and in her mind, she didn't see people who loved her and were concerned for her. She saw a firing squad. I see, she said, her voice dropping to a dangerously quiet level. I see how it is, all of you, you're all against me. She turned her gaze back to me, and the look in her eyes was one of pure hatred. It was a look I had never seen before, and it chilled me to the bone. You, she said, her voice dripping with venom. You did this. You've always been jealous of my friendship with Chloe, and you've been poisoning me against her, trying to take her for yourself. The accusation was so ludicrous, so completely backward that I could only stare at her in stunned silence. She had twisted reality into a pretzel to make herself the victim. Get out, she whispered. What, my father said, stepping forward. Olivia, that's your sister. No, Olivia said, her voice rising again. She is no sister of mine, not anymore. I want her out of my wedding, and you too, she said, glaring at our parents. If you're going to take her side, you can all go, all of you. The finality in her voice was absolute. She meant it. She was willing to disown her entire family in the middle of her own wedding to protect her delusion. There was nothing more to say. The damage was done. It was irreparable. Without another word, I turned around. I could feel the stares of 100 guests on my back. I walked out of the ballroom, my heart feeling like a lead weight in my chest. I found my mother weeping in the foyer, my father trying to console her, his face a grim mask of shock. My only thought was of Chloe. I pulled out my phone and called her. She picked up on the second ring, her voice thick with sobs. Oh, where are you? I asked gently. In the parking lot, she cried. My boyfriend is getting the car. Don't go anywhere, I said. I'm coming with you. I hung up and looked at my parents. I'm going to make sure she's okay. My dad just nodded, his eyes filled with a sorrow so deep it was bottomless. Go, he said, we'll handle this. But I knew, and he knew, that there was nothing left to handle. My sister had set a fire, and all we could do now was step away and watch everything burn. The days following the wedding were silent and heavy, like the air after a storm. The silence from Olivia was the most profound. It wasn't just a lack of an apology, it was a complete and total severance. My calls went straight to voicemail. My texts were met with the stark blue of a delivered receipt and nothing more. My parents faced the same wall. After 2 days, we all received the same chillingly final text message from a number we didn't recognize, which we later learned belonged to one of Olivia's new friends. It read, "This is a message from Olivia. She considers her relationship with Lucia and with her parents to be over. She has blocked your numbers and will not be responding to any attempts at communication. She wishes you the best and asks that you respect her privacy during this time." Just like that, we were erased. It wasn't a fight that would blow over, it was an amputation. My mother spent the better part of a week in tears, cycling through grief, anger, and utter confusion. How can she do this? She would ask me over and over, her voice trembling. We're her family, how can she just throw us away? My father retreated into a quiet, grim sadness, the lines on his face seeming to deepen overnight. Our family, once so loud and vibrant, was now fractured and hushed. My primary focus became Chloe. She was shattered. The public humiliation was one thing, but the loss of Olivia was a grief that consumed her. They had been inseparable for over 2 decades. Olivia's family was Chloe's second family. She had lost it all in one night. I spent hours at her apartment, just sitting with her as she cried, talking through the same unbelievable events again and again, trying to make sense of something that was senseless. "What did I do wrong, Lucia?" she'd ask, her eyes red and swollen. "I've gone over it 1,000 times in my head. Was it the dress? Should I have just worn something else?" "No," I would tell her firmly every single time. "You did nothing wrong. The dress was just an excuse. If it wasn't the dress, it would have been something else. It would have been the way you smiled, the way you danced, the way you breathed. This wasn't about you, Chloe. It was about her." Her boyfriend was a rock, a quiet, steady presence who was just as furious on her behalf as I was. Together, we formed a small, protective circle around her. But the betrayal had left a deep wound. Chloe, a pediatric nurse who spent her days caring for others, had a hard time understanding such intentional cruelty. She had lost her best friend, the girl she'd shared every secret and milestone with. The Olivia she knew had vanished, replaced by a cruel stranger. Meanwhile, Olivia and Mark had gone on their honeymoon to Italy, a trip that was supposed to be the romantic start of their new life together. Olivia's social media, after a few days of silence, flickered back to life. It was a bizarre, jarring performance of happiness. There were pictures of them smiling in front of the Colosseum, clinking glasses of wine on a picturesque balcony, laughing as they made pasta. But if you looked closely, the illusion was flawed. Mark's smile never quite reached his eyes. In every photo, he looked strained, tired. Olivia, on the other hand, looked defiant, her captions filled with saccharine declarations of love and hashtags like unbothered and just the two of us. It was a performance for an audience of three, me, my parents, and Chloe. She was trying to show us that she didn't need us, that she was happier without us. We heard scraps of information from my aunt, my mother's sister, who Olivia hadn't cut off yet. The official story Olivia was telling the extended family was that I had caused a scene at her wedding out of jealousy and that our parents had taken my side. She painted herself as the victim of a toxic family who couldn't stand to see her happy. Some relatives, the ones who only saw Olivia's charming exterior, believed it. Our family was divided, with people taking sides based on Olivia's carefully crafted lies. The months dragged on, autumn turned to winter, the holidays were a somber affair. My mother cooked the traditional feast, but there was an empty chair at the table that felt like a black hole. We tried to celebrate, but the joy was hollow. We sent Olivia a Christmas gift, a beautiful cashmere scarf she would have loved. We sent it via my aunt. We never heard if she even opened it. Through it all, I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop. I knew Mark. He was a good man, a logical man. He might be blinded by love and a desire to keep the peace in his new marriage, but he couldn't live inside Olivia's fantasy forever. Reality had to intrude eventually. The performance of a perfect marriage had to crack under the strain of supporting such a monumental lie. I didn't know when or how it would happen, but I knew it was coming. The foundation of their life together was built on sand, and the tide was inevitably going to come in. About 7 months after the wedding, my phone rang late on a Tuesday night. I saw Mark's name flash on the screen, and my heart leaped into my throat. We hadn't spoken since the reception. I had assumed Olivia had forbidden him from contacting me or that he had chosen his side and it wasn't ours. I answered, my hand trembling slightly. "Lucia," his voice was raspy, broken. He sounded like a man who hadn't slept in a week. "Mark, are you okay? Is Olivia okay?" Despite everything, a flicker of fear for my sister ignited in me. He let out a sound that was half a sob, half a bitter laugh. "No, neither of us is okay. Lucia, I'm so sorry." "Sorry for what?" I asked, sinking onto my sofa. "For everything," he said, his voice cracking. "For not seeing it, for not believing you, for letting her do what she did to Chloe. I was so stupid. I just wanted to be a good husband, and I thought I thought it was just stress." A torrent of words poured out of him, a confession that had clearly been bottled up for months. The honeymoon, he said, had been a nightmare. Olivia had been obsessive paranoid. She demanded the passcode to his phone every night and would spend hours scrolling through his texts, his emails, his call logs, searching for any evidence of betrayal. She cross-examined him about every woman he interacted with, from the hotel concierge to a waitress at a cafe. Life back home had been worse. Her paranoia had fixated completely on Chloe. She forbade Mark from ever saying Chloe's name. If a mutual friend brought her up, Olivia would fly into a rage later, accusing him of secretly enjoying hearing about her. He described a life of walking on eggshells where any innocent comment could be twisted into a confirmation of her darkest fears. He was isolated from his own friends and from us, his new family. He was living in a prison of her insecurity. "I tried to get her to go to therapy," he said, his voice ragged. "For us, I told her jealousy was destroying us. She refused. She said the only problem was my unresolved feelings for Chloe, and that if I truly loved her, I would prove it by cutting off anyone who was still friends with her." The breaking point had come 2 nights before. Olivia had fallen asleep, but she'd left her laptop open on the couch. Mark had seen a document open, something that looked like a diary. He knew he shouldn't, but a desperate need to understand what was happening inside his wife's head took over. He started reading. "Lucia," he said, his voice dropping to a horrified whisper. It was insane. It was a whole world, a completely fabricated world. He described what he'd read. It was a journal she had been keeping for years. In it, she had documented a complete fantasy narrative of an ongoing emotional affair between him and Chloe. It started all the way back when they first started dating. An innocent compliment Mark gave Chloe about her new haircut was recorded as the first time he openly flirted with her in front of me. A time he'd helped Chloe carry some heavy boxes when she was moving was written down as a secret, romantic rendezvous. The barbecue at our parents' house where he complimented her on her nursing story. In Olivia's journal, that was the night she knew Chloe had made her move and that Mark was tempted. The journal twisted every single innocent interaction, every friendly text, every laugh into a piece of a sordid imaginary affair. It was filled with pages and pages of her own analysis, interpreting Chloe's social media posts as secret messages to him, reading hidden meanings into the clothes Chloe wore. "The wedding," Mark choked out. She had a whole section on the wedding. She wrote that she knew Chloe would try to make her final stand there. She was convinced Chloe bought that emerald dress months in advance, that it was her seduction dress. She wrote that when Chloe bumped into me on the dance floor, it was a blatant physical advance and that the look in my eyes was one of guilt and longing. She believed it, Lucia. She truly, 100% believes this stuff is real. I sat in stunned silence, listening to him describe the depths of my sister's delusion. It was worse than I could have ever imagined. It wasn't just jealousy, it was a complete and utter break from reality. "I confronted her," Mark continued, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion. "I held up the laptop and I asked her what it was. At first, she denied it, then she tried to justify it. She said she was just writing down the truth that we were all too scared to admit. She told me I was the one who was sick for denying my feelings for Chloe." There was a long pause on the line. I could hear his shaky breaths. "I packed a bag last night," he said quietly. "I'm staying at my brother's house. I told her I was leaving. I can't live like that, Lucia. I can't live in her head anymore. It's not sane. I love her. Or I loved the person I thought she was, but this person, I don't know who this person is." He took another deep breath. "I filed for divorce this morning." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Divorce, it was so final, so devastating. I felt a wave of profound sadness for my sister, for the life she had just lost. But underneath the sadness, there was also a sliver of cold, hard relief. The truth was finally out. The fantasy had shattered. The news of the divorce hung in the air between us. I was a strange cocktail of emotions. A deep, aching sadness for my sister, a sense of vindication for Chloe, and a sliver of relief that the charade was finally over. The truth, as devastating as it was out. "Mark, I don't know what to say," I finally managed. "I'm so sorry you went through all that." "I'm sorry for my part in it," he said earnestly. "I enabled her, I kept making excuses for her. I should have stood up for Chloe at the wedding and for you and for your parents. I let her isolate me, and in doing so, I validated her delusion. I will never forgive myself for what she put Chloe through. We talked for another hour. He told me he planned to reach out to Chloe directly to apologize once he figured out the right words. He asked me to pass along his deepest regrets to our parents. He sounded like a man who had survived a shipwreck, exhausted and battered, but finally on solid ground. A laugh. Till we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time just processing. Olivia's meticulously crafted world, the one where she was the romantic heroine and the wronged wife, had crumbled because it couldn't withstand the weight of one person, her husband, refusing to live in it with her. The next day, I went to see my parents and told them everything. My mother cried, but this time her tears were different. They weren't just tears of hurt, they were tears of grief for the daughter she had lost, not to a fight, but to a sickness in her mind that none of us had understood. My father, ever the pragmatist, just shook his head slowly. She needs professional help, he said, his voice heavy. But she won't accept it until she hits rock bottom. Maybe this is it. My hardest conversation was with Chloe. I invited her over for coffee that weekend. I didn't want to tell her over the phone. I sat across from her at my kitchen table and gently recounted my conversation with Mark, including the horrifying details from the journal. As I spoke, I watched a series of emotions play across her face. First shock, then a profound sadness, and finally a quiet, heartbreaking validation. Tears welled in her eyes, but she wasn't sobbing like she had been in the months before. It was a gentle, quiet weeping. "So I wasn't crazy," she whispered, more to herself than to me. "I wasn't imagining it. She really did believe all of that." "As she did," I confirmed softly. "All those years," she said, looking off into the distance. "All those sleepovers and secrets and laughs, were they all fake? Was she always seeing something else?" "I don't think so," I said, reaching across the table to take her hand. "I think the Olivia we grew up with was real, but somewhere along the way, her fear and her insecurity got bigger than her love. It started poisoning everything. This isn't a reflection on you, Chloe. It's a reflection of her own pain." She nodded, wiping her tears. The news didn't bring her joy, only a sorrowful clarity. The friend she had lost wasn't just gone. In some ways, she had never truly existed in the way Chloe thought. A week later, Mark met with Chloe and gave her the apology he'd promised. It was a difficult but necessary step, a closing of a painful chapter for both of them. In the months since, Olivia has remained isolated. The divorce was finalized quickly. She moved out of the beautiful home she had shared with Mark and into a small apartment across town. According to my aunt, she tells a new version of the story now, that Mark left her for Chloe, that their affair is finally out in the open. It's the only narrative that allows her to remain the victim. She has refused all our attempts to reach out, to offer help or support. She is marooned on an island of her own making, and she has pushed away every boat that has tried to come to her rescue. Our family is changed forever. The wound is still there, but something new has grown in its place. A quiet fear spawned between me, my parents, Chloe, and even Mark. We are a strange little patchwork family, stitched together by the shared trauma of loving someone who chose fantasy over reality. We check in on each other, we have dinner together, we support each other. Sometimes I lie awake and think about my sister. I mourn the relationship we lost, the woman she could have been if not for the jealousy that consumed her. It's a terrifying lesson in how a person's private insecurities, left unchecked, can grow into a monster that devours not only their own life, but the lives of everyone they claim to love. She had a perfect life, a loving husband, a devoted family, and a loyal best friend. And she burned it all to the ground because she couldn't bear to see anyone else's candle shine. For anyone reading this who might see a flicker of this behavior in someone you love, or even in yourself, that small, nagging voice that twists compliments into threats and friendship into competition, I urge you not to ignore it. Don't dismiss it as stress or a bad mood. It's a poison, and if you let it, it will leave you with nothing but ashes.